She was the forbidden daughter of the boss, and the cowboy's greatest temptation. Have you ever heard that fate has a sense of humor? Well, I assure you it does. And sometimes that humor is so cruel it borders on comical. Hunter Callahan was about to find this out the hard way. Before I tell you how this cowboy, or better yet, the ranch manager, is about to be pushed to his limits by the mischievous Brenda, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where in the world you're watching from. It was 4:47 on a Monday morning that promised to be just like every other at Whitaker Ranch, deep in the heart of Montana. The sky was still a dark canvas dotted with stubborn stars refusing to admit the day was coming. The air carried that biting chill only, known to those who rise before the world, the kind that seeps through your pores and jolts every cell, awake with a shock of reality. Hunter walked between the rows of the automated irrigation system, his flashlight slicing the darkness like a blade of light. Each step echoed in the sacred silence of dawn, blending only with the whisper of wind across the pastures and the distant lowing of cattle still asleep. It was his favorite hour, when the world was still his alone, when he could work without interruptions, without curious eyes, without complications. Hunter Callahan was a man of sacred routines and inflexible principles. At 35, he had turned discipline into an art and work into religion. Every move was calculated, every decision thought over 3 times. No wonder he had become indispensable at Whitaker Ranch, the man who made the difference between success and failure, between order and chaos. While checking the soil moisture sensors for the 3rd time, a strange sensation crawled up his spine. It was as if the universe were whispering a warning he couldn't decipher. Hunter paused, lifted his face to the starry sky, and drew in a deep breath. When you've lived long in tune with the land, you develop a 6th sense for change, and something was about to change. That's when he heard the engine. The sound tore through the quiet dawn like unexpected thunder. Hunter frowned, glanced at his watch, and muttered to himself, 4:50 in the morning. Who the hell shows up at this hour? He wasn't expecting any supplier, veterinarian, or delivery. The ranch ran like a Swiss clock, and unannounced visitors were rarer than snow in July. The engine noise drew closer, accompanied by the crunch of tires on the gravel road leading to the main house. Hunter switched off his flashlight and strode toward the sound. Driven by curiosity and the protective instinct he had honed over 5 years caring for this slice of paradise. When he finally saw the vehicle, he couldn't help an ironic smile. A red Honda Civic that had clearly seen better days, one rear light flickering erratically, and a faded college sticker clinging to the back windshield. Definitely not the kind of car usually pulling up at Whitaker Ranch. The engine sputtered its last and fell silent, leaving the air charged with expectation. Hunter lingered in the shadows, watching, waiting to see who was crazy enough to arrive at that hour. The driver's door creaked open, and out stepped a vision that made Hunter forget how to breathe. A young woman, early 20s, with brown hair that caught the starlight even in the dark. She wore faded jeans, a leather jacket that had clearly seen miles of highway, and boots that hinted she wasn't unfamiliar with hard work. But what really struck Hunter was the way she moved, restless energy radiating from her. Like standing still was never an option. She emerged like a storm, slinging a backpack over her shoulder in a motion laced with hurry and frustration. And then, to Hunter's astonishment and amusement, she started talking to herself. "Perfect, Brenda. Just perfect," she muttered, her voice dripping with self-mockery that was impossible not to find charming. "Arrive at 5 in the morning like a complete lunatic. Dad's going to be thrilled. At least I didn't wake anyone, right? Because clearly I'm the most discreet person alive." She raked a hand through her hair. Pure nerves, Hunter could tell, before turning to grab another bag from the back seat. That's when he chose to make his presence known. "Good morning," Hunter said, stepping from the shadows. The effect was instant and spectacular. Brenda, if that was indeed her name, spun around so fast she tripped over her own suitcase, performing a clumsy dance to avoid hitting the ground. For one dreadful second, Hunter thought she'd crash into the gravel, and his cowboy reflexes nearly propelled him forward. But she recovered with the agility of someone used to embarrassing scrapes, straightening with the dignity of a woman who had meant to do exactly that. "Ah," she exclaimed, a hand flying to her chest in a dramatic gesture that would have been comical if it weren't so genuine. "Hi, you scared me. I mean, obviously you scared me, otherwise I wouldn't have just done a circus act in the middle of the driveway." She paused, regaining composure, and Hunter caught the exact moment she processed the situation. Her eyes, extraordinary even in the dim light, narrowed slightly as she studied him. "You must be the new guy?" she asked, curiosity mingling with uncertainty. Hunter nearly choked. The new guy? Him who knew every inch of that ranch better than its owner? Who had spent 5 years shaping it into a model of efficiency and sustainability? The new guy? The new guy? He echoed, disbelief sharpening his tone. "Ma'am, I've worked here 5 years." Now it was her turn to look puzzled. Brenda tilted her head like a curious bird, studying him with a focus that made Hunter feel oddly exposed. 5 years? She repeated. "But I thought, how could you have worked here 5 years if I've never seen you before?" "Maybe because you've never been here before," Hunter suggested, a reluctant smile tugging at his mouth despite the absurdity. "Oh, right." Brenda laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze, delicate but impossible to ignore. "Sorry, what a weird introduction. I'm Brenda Whitaker." And just like that, Hunter Callahan's world turned upside down. Whitaker, the daughter. The boss's daughter, the one away at college studying veterinary medicine. The girl every ranch hand described as sweet and well-behaved whenever her name came up. Hunter felt as though someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over his head. All the ease of the moment vanished, replaced by a panic he hadn't felt. For this wasn't an unexpected visitor. This wasn't a lost stranger. This was the boss's daughter, young, unmarried, beautiful, and bursting with a vitality that made his pulse stumble, and Hunter was standing, alone with her in the pre-dawn dark, finding her utterly fascinating. "The daughter," he muttered, mostly to himself. "Guilty," Brenda confirmed with a grin that carried not the faintest trace of apology. "Though the daughter sounds a little formal. I prefer the one who finally came home." She extended her hand, a simple gesture suddenly heavy with meaning. Hunter looked at that hand, small but calloused, shaped by real work, and hesitation held him for what felt like forever. Taking her hand felt like stepping onto a road he wasn't sure he wanted to walk. But manners were manners, and Hunter Callahan had been raised a gentleman. "Hunter Callahan," he said at last, enclosing her hand in his. "Ranch manager?" The handshake lasted 3 seconds at most, but it was long enough for Hunter to notice far too much. Her skin was surprisingly rough for someone supposedly buried in books these past years. Her hand was smaller, yet the grip was firm, confident. And when their palms met, a spark leapt, a current he couldn't ignore. "The famous Hunter!" Brenda exclaimed the moment their hands parted, genuine excitement coloring her voice. "Dad doesn't stop talking about you. Hunter this, Hunter that. If it weren't for Hunter, the ranch would have gone under ages ago." She mimicked her father's deep voice with such accuracy that it tugged a reluctant smile from Hunter, despite the storm churning inside him. "Your father is very generous," Hunter replied, trying to keep his tone professional and failing miserably. Something about her presence made it impossible to keep all his defenses in place. Brenda glanced at the 5 suitcases scattered around the car, with an expression caught between determination and slight embarrassment. "It'd be great if you could help me with the bags," she said, "unless you've got something more important to do at 5 in the morning." There was a teasing note in her voice, as though she were testing the limits of his patience. Hunter, who had never faced a situation he couldn't control with hard work and discipline, suddenly found himself in completely uncharted territory. "There's always something," he replied, perhaps a little sharper than he meant to. "Like what?" Brenda challenged, folding her arms in a way that drew attention to curves Hunter definitely shouldn't be noticing. "Counting calves in the dark?" The question carried a playful mockery but also real curiosity. To his own surprise, Hunter found himself wanting to explain, wanting her to understand that his work was far more complex than it looked. "Irrigation system," he said, gesturing toward the fields where he'd been working. "If it doesn't run properly, we lose the entire winter crop." To his surprise, Brenda's expression shifted instantly. The teasing melted away, replaced by genuine interest, and she leaned slightly forward as if eager to absorb every word. "Really?" she asked, and this time her voice carried no trace of mockery. "What kind of system do you use?" Hunter blinked at her, startled. Most people, especially young women, glazed over the second he mentioned irrigation, crop rotation, or any other technical detail of agriculture. "Automated drip system with soil moisture sensors," he explained cautiously, still waiting for the polite but vacant stare that signaled the listener was just humoring him. Instead, Brenda's eyes lit with genuine interest. "Wow, that's incredible," she exclaimed. "And does it work well with this kind of soil? Because Montana's full of limestone, must be a nightmare for the system filters." Hunter stopped short, turning fully to face her. How did she know about lime buildup in irrigation filters? "How do you know about irrigation filters?" he asked, genuinely intrigued. Brenda smiled, pride flickering across her face. "Vet school, remember?" she said. "I had to study sustainable agriculture, production systems, soil management. I learned more than how to party and paint my nails." Her tone carried a faint defensiveness, as if she were used to proving her competence. Hunter felt a pang of something dangerously close to respect. If he'd let himself admit such a thing about the boss's daughter, was all he managed, suddenly feeling like an idiot for assuming she was just another spoiled daddy's girl. Brenda seemed to catch his discomfort and offered a smile that was half understanding, half amusement. "Don't worry," she said. "Everyone makes that assumption. Apparently, being born with money automatically makes me incapable of learning anything useful." Heat crept into Hunter's cheeks, even in the dark. That had been exactly his thought, and the fact that she had seen through him so easily made the moment even more uncomfortable. "That's not what I meant," he tried to explain, but Brenda was already laughing. "Yes, it is," she said lightly but without a shred of bitterness. "And that's fine. I'd rather prove myself with actions than words anyway." She moved toward the luggage with determination, making it clear the discussion of her qualifications was over. Hunter watched her heft the heaviest suitcase with ease, proof enough that Brenda Whitaker was far from the delicate little thing everyone imagined. As they carried the bags toward the main house, Hunter found himself watching the way she moved. There was grace in her steps, but also strength, the kind built through years of real labor. She didn't walk like someone raised on marble floors and high heels. She walked like someone who knew the land, who understood it beneath her feet. "How long has it been since you were last here?" he asked, mostly to break the silence that was becoming heavy with a tension he couldn't define. "Almost 2 years," Brenda answered, shifting the suitcase on her shoulder. "College kept me busy, and when I had breaks, Dad always pushed me to have urban experiences." The audible quotation marks around the phrase carried a weight that told Hunter those urban experiences hadn't been what she wanted. "And you wanted to come back?" he asked, genuinely curious. Brenda paused, glancing around as if seeing the landscape anew. Even in the pre-dawn dark, there was majesty in the vast pastures stretching to the horizon, broken only by the silhouette of distant mountains. "Always," she said at last, nostalgia threading through her voice in a way that made something tighten in Hunter's chest. "This is my real home. Not the city house, not the apartment near campus, here." She gestured toward the fields, the ranch buildings, the endless sky beginning to blush with dawn. "This is where I feel whole," she continued, almost as if speaking to herself. "Like every breath makes sense here." Hunter understood perfectly. It was the same feeling that had kept him on the ranch for 5 years, that had him waking at 4:30 without complaint, that turned hard labor into calling. "Does your father know you feel this way?" he asked. Brenda laughed, though it lacked joy. "Dad thinks it's a phase, that once I grow up, I'll realize I want a more civilized life. And you? Do you think it's a phase?" Brenda turned to him, and even in the dim light, Hunter could see the determination burning in her eyes. "Hunter," she said, "I was born for this land. I may have a college degree and painted nails when I need them, but my heart's been buried in this soil for 23 years. There was passion in her voice, the same passion that drove Hunter to check cattle even when sick. to stay up during storms, to treat every acre like it was his own lifeblood. And in that moment, Hunter Callahan realized he was in serious trouble, because it wasn't just that Brenda was too beautiful. It wasn't just her smile, her teasing, or the sparkle in her eyes under starlight. It was the fact that she understood. When she looked out at those fields, she saw what he saw. When she spoke of the land, she spoke with the same reverence he felt, but had never managed to put into words. They reached the porch of the main house just as the first traces of color began to stretch across the eastern horizon. The sky was shifting from absolute black to a deep blue, promising a sunrise as spectacular as any in that corner of Montana. Brenda set the suitcase down and turned to him, extending her hand once again. "Thank you for your help, Hunter," she said, and there was a formality in her tone that hadn't been there during their earlier conversation. Hunter looked at the offered hand and knew this was another one of those moments that would shape what came next. Accepting her thanks and stepping away would be the sensible choice. Maintain professional distance, treat her as the boss's daughter she was. Return to his safe, predictable routine. Instead, he wrapped her hand in his once more, and this time allowed the contact to last a second longer than strictly proper. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Miss Whitaker," he said, realizing his voice had come out rougher than he intended. "Brenda," she corrected, and there was something in her eyes that sent Hunter's pulse racing. "And something tells me we'll be seeing a lot of each other soon." There was nothing overtly suggestive in the words, but the way she said them, with a small, mysterious smile, made Hunter feel as if she were promising something he had no business wanting to hear. She pulled away, gathering her bags and heading toward the door of the house. Hunter stayed where he was, watching her vanish into the shadows of the porch, trying to process what had just happened. In 20 minutes, his life had become complicated in ways he hadn't even thought possible. The boss's daughter was not the delicate, spoiled girl everyone imagined. She was sharp, passionate, provocative, and worst of all, seemed to understand exactly what made his world turn. And as he walked back to his work, trying to reclaim the routine so abruptly broken, Hunter Callahan couldn't stop replaying the way she had said his name, the way her eyes had shone when she spoke about loving this land, or how her laughter had sounded like music in his ears. The sun was rising over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose that turned the landscape into something almost magical. It was the kind of dawn that usually filled Hunter with peace and purpose, reminding him why he had chosen this life. But this particular morning, as he checked the same irrigation sensors for the 4th time since her arrival, Hunter Callahan had only one thought pounding in his head like an inevitable mantra. "I'm screwed. Completely, hopelessly screwed." Hunter spent the rest of Monday convincing himself he could avoid Brenda Whitaker. After all, the ranch spanned over 1,000 hectares. Plenty of space for two people not to cross paths, if one of them was clever enough to plan alternate routes. Unfortunately, Hunter had completely underestimated the determination of a freshly graduated veterinarian with something to prove. On Tuesday, at precisely 5:30 in the morning, he was in the milking parlor adjusting the machines when he heard footsteps approaching, light but purposeful footsteps, the kind that twisted his stomach into a knot before he even turned to see who it was. "Good morning, Hunter." Brenda's sing-song voice rang through the room like a cannon blast in his carefully orchestrated routine. "Hope you don't mind having a helper?" Hunter turned slowly, prepared to politely dismiss her, but the words died in his throat. Brenda stood there in coveralls, rubber boots, and her hair tied back in a practical ponytail. In her hands was a pair of milking gloves that had clearly seen use before. "Miss Whitaker," he said, forcing a professional, distant tone, "this isn't a place for—" "For what?" she interrupted, already striding toward the cows with a confidence that left him momentarily speechless. "For the boss's daughter? I grew up here, Hunter. I learned to milk before I learned to tie my shoes." Hunter clenched his fists, struggling to hold his composure. The strategy was simple, polite but firm. Keep his distance. Don't take the bait. "But your father said you'd be working on the administrative projects," he insisted, desperate to find a way to get her out of there before his sanity completely unraveled. Brenda laughed as she positioned herself beside one of the most temperamental cows on the ranch, Bertha, notorious for kicking anyone she didn't know. Administrative project number 1, she said, beginning to milk with practiced movements, is understanding how things actually work. Isn't that right, Bertha? To Hunter's astonishment, the cow, who normally needed to be restrained by 2 men, remained calm as a lamb. More than that, she looked relaxed. How did you do that? He asked, genuinely impressed despite himself. Do what? Brenda looked up at him with eyes far too innocent to be believable. Bertha hates strangers. Last week she broke Tommy's rib. Oh, that. Brenda smiled in a way that made Hunter's stomach lurch. I talked to her first. Cows are like men. They respond better when you treat them with respect. Heat climbed into Hunter's ears. There was something in the way she said men that suggested she wasn't only talking about cattle. You going to stand there staring all day? Brenda continued, not missing a beat. Or are you going to help me? Because I get the feeling we've got a lot of cows and not much time. Over the next hour, Hunter discovered 2 troubling things. First, Brenda really did know what she was doing. Second, working beside her was like trying to concentrate during an earthquake. She hummed while she worked. She joked with the cows. And worst of all, she occasionally made comments that left Hunter unsure whether she was talking about livestock or something else entirely. This one's stubborn, isn't she? She said, wrestling with a particularly resistant cow. But I bet with the right technique, she'll give in completely. Hunter nearly dropped the milk pail. Miss Whitaker. Brenda, she corrected, and there was a playful note in her voice that suggested she knew exactly the effect she was having. By the time they finished, Hunter was exhausted, not from the physical work, but from the Herculean effort of ignoring her presence. He thought he had survived the worst. He was wrong. On Wednesday, she showed up in the main corral during cattle sorting, riding a horse Hunter didn't recognize. Morning, partner. She greeted cheerfully as if they were long-time co-workers. Where did you get that horse? He asked, forcing his tone to stay neutral. This is Thunder. He remembers me. Hunter looked more closely and felt his heart stop. Thunder was the most temperamental horse on the ranch, a quarter horse that tolerated only 2 riders, himself and Mr. Whitaker. Brenda, get down right now. That horse is dangerous. For people who don't know how to ride him. She shot back, guiding Thunder into a flawless turn that would have impressed seasoned cowboys. Relax, Hunter. This isn't the first time I've ridden a stubborn male. Once again, Hunter felt as though she was speaking about 2 things at once. Anyway, Brenda continued, pulling a tablet in a waterproof case from the saddle. I brought something to help with the work. A tablet? In the corral? To record cattle behavior. There's an app that analyzes movement patterns and identifies sick or stressed animals before we even notice. Hunter crossed his arms, determined not to show interest. A phone app doesn't replace experience. It doesn't, Brenda agreed, with a smile that should have come with a warning label. But it complements it. And who knows? Maybe you'll learn a thing or 2 from me. The way she said a thing or 2 made Hunter swallow hard. 2 hours later, the damned app had flagged a calf with the beginnings of lameness that Hunter had completely missed. The animal had a small hoof inflammation that, if untreated, could have turned into a serious infection. Good work, Hunter admitted grudgingly. Thank you. Brenda's face lit up with a genuine smile that hit him like a punch to the gut. See? Technology and experience can be great friends. Just like other things. Hunter pretended not to hear the last part. On Thursday, he thought he had found refuge working alone on the electric fencing system in the most remote part of the property. It was technical, dirty, heavy work, definitely not the kind of thing that would interest a newly minted veterinarian. Obviously, he was dead wrong. Need a hand? Her voice appeared out of nowhere behind him. Hunter spun around so fast he nearly electrocuted himself on the fence. How did you find me here? I asked Joe. He said you were doing man stuff with the fence. Brenda made air quotes, mimicking the ranch hand's gravelly voice. So I decided to come see this man stuff. Hunter decided Joe was in for one hell of a lecture later. It's heavy work, miss. I've got hands, she said, pulling off her gloves and showing calloused palms that definitely didn't belong to a spoiled daddy's girl. Those are delicate hands, Hunter insisted desperately. Brenda laughed, a sound that was quickly becoming the soundtrack of Hunter's nightmares. Delicate? She stepped closer, holding out her hands so he could see. These hands have delivered foals, fixed broken fences, and held down bulls during vaccinations. Which part of that would you call delicate? Hunter looked at her hands, small but clearly strong, with tiny scars that told stories of hard work, and felt something tighten in his chest. Fine, he muttered, defeated. You can help. They worked in silence for an hour, and Hunter began to relax. Maybe he could survive this after all. Brenda was being professional, efficient, not provoking. And then she started humming. What song is that? He asked despite himself. Taylor Swift, Love Story, as you don't know it. I don't listen to that kind of music. What kind do you listen to? Classic country. Johnny Cash, Hank Williams. Brenda stopped working and gave him a look that was half amusement, half challenge. Oh, I see. You're the traditional type. You like things the old-fashioned way. I like things that work, Hunter replied, throwing himself back into the job harder than necessary. Brenda went back to humming. Another well-known pop song about a modern Romeo and a secret love. She didn't need to spell it out. Hunter had already forgotten the lyrics. All he could hear was her laughter, so close. Miss Whitaker? Brenda stopped humming and turned to him with a smile full of mischief. It's a song about forbidden love, Hunter. Romeo and Juliet, modern version. Don't you think that's romantic? The way she said romantic made Hunter forget how to speak for a moment. I don't have time for romance, he managed, forcing himself back to work with renewed determination. Brenda stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume mingling with leather and grass. Everyone has time for romance, Hunter, she whispered. The question is finding the right person. Hunter turned to snap back, to put distance between them, to do anything but stand there staring into her eyes like some love-struck teenager. But just then a familiar voice rang out across the pasture. Hunter! Brenda! They jumped apart as if shocked by the electric fence. Mr. Whitaker was striding toward them, his expression unreadable. What are you two doing out here? The older man asked, his sharp eyes missing nothing. Fixing the fence, sir, Hunter answered, trying to sound professional and failing miserably. Daddy. Brenda ran to him like a 5-year-old. I was helping Hunter. He's teaching me about electrical systems. Mr. Whitaker looked at his daughter with an expression that was equal parts pride and something Hunter didn't like at all. I thought you'd be working on the administrative projects, Princess. I'm researching, Daddy. How can I improve something I don't fully understand? The smile Mr. Whitaker gave his daughter was pure paternal pride. Smart like your mother, he murmured before turning to Hunter. Hunter, I need you to take good care of my girl. She's special. There was something in the man's tone, a subtle but unmistakable warning that made Hunter swallow hard. Of course, sir. She's in good hands. Good, said Mr. Whitaker, though his eyes lingered on Hunter a second too long. And Hunter, you know the men around here. They're good boys, but, well, men are men. I don't want any of them messing around with my princess. Count on me to keep my eyes wide open. Hunter nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and the warning in his boss's words. Understood, sir. You can count on me, because it'd be a shame if someone took advantage of her trust, Mr. Whitaker added, his look leaving no doubt about what would happen to anyone foolish enough to try. The message was crystal clear. Protect my daughter from the others. But don't you dare be the problem yourself, not unless you want to be fired, or worse. When Mr. Whitaker walked away, Brenda turned to Hunter with a smile that was pure wickedness. Looks like you officially have to take good care of me, Hunter. Brenda. So does this mean I get to work with you every day? That's not a good idea. Why not? Hunter looked into her eyes, those eyes that seemed to see right through every defense he had, and realized he was fighting a losing battle. Because, he said at last, you're a distraction. What kind of distraction? The dangerous kind? Brenda smiled, a small, satisfied smile that told Hunter she had just won the first battle of a war he hadn't even realized he was fighting. Perfect, she said, pulling on her gloves. I love being dangerous, As she walked away, swaying her hips in a way that was definitely not accidental, Hunter stood there staring at the still broken fence, wondering if he should start looking for a job on another ranch, because one thing had become painfully clear. Brenda Whitaker wasn't just pretty or smart or provocative. She was all of those things wrapped up in a package stamped with the label danger, highly addictive. And Hunter was starting to suspect it was already too late to escape unscathed. Hunter Callahan had always known fire was dangerous. The problem was that no one had ever told him some flames were absolutely irresistible. On Friday morning, he woke up determined to take control of the situation again. He had a strategy: avoid being alone with Brenda at all costs. If she showed up, he would make sure other people were around. Witnesses were the best defense against, well, whatever it was that was happening between them. At 8 o'clock, there was a knock on the office door. "Come in," Hunter said, not lifting his eyes from the paperwork. "Good morning, partner." Hunter closed his eyes for a moment. Of course it would be her. When he finally looked up, he nearly choked on his coffee. Brenda stood there in a pale blue blouse that made her eyes shine even brighter, jeans that had no business being allowed in a professional setting, and a smile that promised trouble with a capital T, and she was carrying a tray. "I brought coffee," she announced, setting the tray on his desk. "Hot coffee, Mrs. Maria's cornbread, homemade peach jam, and a proposal." Hunter eyed the tray suspiciously, then her. What kind of proposal? Brenda sat down in the chair across from him. Or no, sat was too kind a word. She settled in with a mix of elegance and calculated provocation. "I want to implement an integrated management system here on the ranch." Hunter grabbed the coffee, grateful to have something for his hands to do. "A system of what?" And then Brenda started talking, and Hunter discovered something new and unsettling. Brenda Whitaker talking about sustainable agriculture was just as attractive as Brenda teasing him. Maybe even more. Automated inventory control, cattle health monitoring through chips, optimized pasture rotation systems, integrated weather forecasting. She opened her laptop and began showing him spreadsheets, graphs, projections. She was clearly prepared. More than that, she was brilliant. "That must cost a fortune," Hunter said, trying to poke holes in the plan because admitting it was perfect was far too dangerous. "Actually, no." Brenda leaned forward, and Hunter had to consciously force himself to keep his eyes on the laptop and not the curve of her neck. "There's a federal program that subsidizes 70% of the costs for farms that implement sustainable technology." "How do you know that?" "Researched it." She smiled, and it was genuine pride. "A lot. The ranch could save 30% in operational costs the first year." Hunter took a sip of coffee. It was perfect. Strong, no sugar, exactly how he liked it. "How did you know I drink coffee like this?" Brenda bit her lower lip for a second, a small gesture that made something twist in his stomach. "I asked Mrs. Maria." "Why?" The question came out softer than he intended. Brenda looked at him over the laptop, and there was something vulnerable in her eyes that didn't match the teasing girl of the past few days. Because I want to do this right. The project. I want you to agree to work with me on it." Hunter set the cup down and walked to the window. He needed distance, air, anything that wasn't staring at her. "Brenda, I know what you think." Her voice dropped. "Daddy's spoiled little girl playing farmer." "But that's not it, Hunter. I love this place." Hunter didn't turn around. If he did, he'd be lost. "I don't think that." "No? I think you're—" He hesitated, searching for the right word. "Complicated." He heard the chair move, soft footsteps approaching. She was coming toward him. His heartbeat quickened. "Complicated." Her voice was closer now, dangerously close. "What kind of complicated?" Hunter turned, ready to put space between them, and discovered she was less than a yard away. When had she gotten so close? The kind that makes a man forget the rules. Brenda tilted her head, studying his face with that piercing gaze that seemed to see through every defense. "What rules?" Hunter's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Rule number 1, never get involved with the boss's daughter." Brenda stepped even closer. Now they were so near, Hunter could see the tiny golden flecks in her blue eyes. Count every eyelash. Feel the warmth radiating from her. "And what if the boss's daughter gets involved with you?" For a moment, an eternal, impossible moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt electric, charged with something Hunter didn't want to name but couldn't ignore. Then, thank heavens, the office door opened. "Hunter, I need you to—" "Oh!" It was Joe, one of the oldest ranch hands, who froze in the doorway with an expression that clearly said he'd interrupted something. Hunter and Brenda jumped apart instantly. Brenda, to her credit, immediately put on a professional, innocent expression. "Hi, Joe," she said sweetly, not a trace of the provocative woman from seconds before. "I was showing Hunter a project. Daddy approved it and everything." Joe looked between them with suspicious eyes, but Brenda's angelic smile was hard to resist. "Well, that's good, Miss Brenda. Your daddy will be proud to see you working like this." When Joe left, after reminding Hunter about the feed delivery, Brenda turned back to him with a smile full of mischief. "See, total professionalism. Brenda." "So?" She returned to the laptop as if nothing had happened. "Are you going to work with me on the project or not?" Hunter knew he should say no. He knew spending more time with her was a recipe for disaster. He knew he was playing with fire, but when he looked at the spreadsheets, the graphs, the meticulous work she had put into it— "All right," he heard himself say. "But there are rules." "What rules?" "Professionalism always, no repeats of what just happened." Brenda made a face of outraged innocence. "What happened?" "We were just talking about the project." Hunter had no reply to that, and at that moment he realized something terrifying. Brenda Whitaker was far more dangerous than she looked. That angel face, those innocent eyes, that sweet smile, it was all a carefully calibrated weapon. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew when to provoke, when to retreat, when to slip on that mask of sweetness that made anyone drop their guard. Trouble, Hunter thought, shaking his head. She's trouble and she knows it. And the worst part? The worst part was that the mix of sharp intelligence and calculated provocation, wrapped in a package of feigned innocence, was working perfectly. Over the next 2 hours, they worked side by side, and Hunter discovered there were two kinds of torture. Brenda openly teasing him, and Brenda being professional. Because when she was being professional, he saw her intelligence, her passion, her dedication. He saw a woman who understood agriculture as well as he did, who loved that land with the same intensity, who had the vision to turn the ranch into something even greater, and that somehow was even more dangerous than her teasing. They were reviewing the pasture rotation maps when it happened. Brenda leaned in to point at something on the map, and her hand rested on his arm. It was a casual touch, even innocent. But the current that shot between them was anything but innocent. "Look here," she said, apparently oblivious to the effect she was having, or pretending to be. With Brenda, it was impossible to tell. "If we divide this area into 3 sections." But her hand stayed there, small and warm against his arm. Hunter tried to focus on the map, on her words, on anything other than that point of contact. He failed miserably. "Does it make sense?" Brenda asked, finally looking at him. Hunter realized he had no idea what she'd said for the last 30 seconds. "Could you repeat that?" She smiled, a small, satisfied smile, and he knew she knew exactly what she was doing. "Distracted, Hunter?" Before he could respond, the door opened again. This time it was Mr. Whitaker. Instantly, Brenda's hand left his arm. She straightened, slipping back into the role of dutiful, professional daughter. "Daddy, look, Hunter's helping me with the project." Mr. Whitaker stepped into the office, his eyes taking in their closeness. The coffee cups, the scattered papers. "Good to see you two working together," he said, but there was something in his tone that made Hunter want to explain that nothing was going on, even though something definitely was. "Brenda has excellent ideas, sir," Hunter said, forcing a professional tone. "This project could really transform the ranch's productivity. I'm sure it will." Mr. Whitaker smiled at his daughter with paternal pride, then turned to Hunter. "Just came to tell you I'll need you in the north pasture tomorrow morning. The vet's coming to do artificial insemination on the heifers." "Of course, sir." "And Brenda." Mr. Whitaker looked at his daughter with that protective gaze Hunter was becoming very familiar with. "Don't wear Hunter out. He's got plenty of work. I'm not wearing him out, Daddy. I'm helping." When Mr. Whitaker left, Brenda let out a soft laugh. "He thinks I'm bothering you." "You are," Hunter admitted before he could stop himself. "Oh yeah? How?" It was a loaded question, and Hunter knew it. Any answer would land him in dangerous territory. Forget it. No, now I'm curious. She stepped closer again, and Hunter found himself trapped between the desk and her body. How exactly am I bothering you? Brenda. Tell me, Hunter. She was so close he could see the challenge in her eyes, feel her perfume curling around his senses. How? You're making me lose focus. On work? On everything. The confession slipped out before he could censor it. Brenda's eyes widened for a moment, surprised by his raw honesty. But before either of them could say another word, one of the ranch hands walked down the hall whistling, breaking the moment. Brenda stepped back, but the smile on her lips was pure victory. Well, she said, gathering her laptop and papers, I'll let you get back to work then. But Hunter, what? Thanks for giving me a chance with the project. You won't regret it. She was almost out the door when Hunter noticed a slip of paper beside his coffee cup, a small folded note that definitely hadn't been there before. He waited until she was completely gone before picking it up. It was a message written in her delicate handwriting. Pass. Thanks for giving me a chance. You won't regret it, and you don't have to fight so hard against what you're feeling. I won't. B. With a heart drawn next to the initial, Hunter stared at the little heart for a full minute. He should throw it away, pretend he'd never seen it, keep his distance. Instead, he folded the note carefully and tucked it into his desk drawer. And when he got back to work 5 minutes later, he caught himself smiling for no reason for the first time in years. I'm screwed, he muttered to the empty office. Completely, irreversibly screwed. But this time, for the first time, the thought didn't seem so terrible. Saturday dawned with the kind of silence that usually comes before storms, literal or otherwise. Hunter still didn't know which one it would be. At 6 a.m., he was checking the pregnant heifers in the south pasture, when Joe's shout split the air. Hunter, problem! Hunter dropped everything and ran. Trouble with a pregnant cow was never good news. When he arrived, he found Joe beside one of the ranch's most valuable cows, Bessie, a prize Angus carrying a calf worth thousands, and Bessie was clearly in the middle of a difficult labor. I already called Dr. Martinez, Joe said, worry carved into his weathered face, but he's tied up with an emergency at another ranch. Won't be here for at least an hour. Hunter knelt beside the cow, quickly assessing the situation. It wasn't good. The calf was poorly positioned, and an hour could be far too long. I'll have to do it myself, he said, rolling up his sleeves. Do it yourself? Hunter spun so fast he nearly lost his balance. Brenda was there, hair in a messy bun, wearing an old t-shirt and ripped jeans. She looked like she'd rolled out of bed not 5 minutes earlier, and still looked maddeningly beautiful. Brenda, go back to the house. This isn't a scene for little girls? She cut in, already kneeling beside Bessie. Hunter, I graduated in veterinary medicine, remember? With a specialty in large animals? Hunter challenged, already knowing the answer. No. Brenda's hands were already steady and precise as she examined the cow. But I did a year-long internship in bovine reproduction. And from the looks of it, her blue eyes locked on his, sharp as ever, I know more about this than you think. Joe looked between the two of them as if watching a particularly tense tennis match. Can I help with something? The old ranch hand asked. Yes, Brenda said without looking away from Hunter. Go grab my vet kit from the house. It's on my dresser. Joe bolted, clearly grateful for the excuse to escape the tension. As soon as they were alone, Brenda smiled. That smile Hunter was learning spelled trouble. So, she said, still focused on the cow, are you going to stand there staring or are you going to help? Hunter swallowed hard. There was something about the way she took control. Confident, competent, utterly commanding, that rattled him in ways he would never admit, not even under torture. What do you need me to do? First, take off your shirt, Hunter froze. What? Brenda looked up at him with a face that was part professional, part pure mischief. The shirt, cowboy. It's going to get filthy anyway, and you'll need freedom in your arms. Unless you're shy? There was a challenge in her tone that lit something deep in his chest. Without breaking eye contact, Hunter peeled off his shirt in one fluid motion and tossed it aside, and had the satisfaction of seeing Brenda's eyes widen, just slightly, tracing over him before she quickly snapped her focus back to the cow. So the lady isn't immune either, Hunter thought, savoring the small but significant victory. Now, Brenda's voice came out a little less steady than before. "Come here. I need you to hold Bessie. Keep her calm while I reposition the calf." For the next 40 minutes, Hunter discovered something he had not been prepared for. There was something deeply, powerfully attractive about watching Brenda work. Not Brenda the tease in the office. Not Brenda who hummed love songs while playing innocent. But this Brenda, focused, competent, with steady hands pulling off the impossible while murmuring soothing words to a frightened animal. "That's it, Bessie. It's going to be okay, sweetheart. I know it hurts, but you're strong." Hunter held the cow's head, keeping her calm just as Brenda had instructed, but his eyes kept straying to the woman kneeling beside him. There was dirt on her face, hair slipping from her bun, sweat on her forehead, and Hunter had never found her more beautiful. "How did you learn to do this?" he heard himself asking. "Practice," Brenda replied without looking up. "Lots and lots of practice. Dr. Martinez let me assist in all the difficult calvings when I was a teenager." "Did your father know?" Brenda laughed, a low, genuine sound that tightened something in Hunter's chest. "Daddy thought I was in piano lessons. And you were learning how to save lives. Much more useful than playing Chopin, don't you think?" There was something in her voice, a note of defiance laced with vulnerability, that made Hunter really look at her for the first time. Not as the boss's daughter, not as the incorrigible tease, but as Brenda. "Why do you do it?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Do what?" "Pretend to be something you're not. In front of your father? In front of everyone else?" The delicate girl, the little princess. Brenda paused for a moment, her hands still working, but her eyes met his. "Because sometimes," she said softly, "it's easier to let people believe what they want to believe than to fight expectations all the time." "And what are you really?" "I'm still figuring that out," she smiled, small, genuine. "But I know I want to be someone who makes a difference. Here, on this land." Before Hunter could respond, Brenda turned all her attention back to Bessie. "Okay, here we go. Come on, sweetheart. That's it." And then, with a precision that seemed almost miraculous, the calf began to emerge. Brenda worked with steady, gentle hands, guiding life into the world with a skill that left Hunter completely awestruck. When the calf finally came, healthy, strong, already trying to stand, Brenda collapsed onto the grass, exhausted but radiant. "We did it," she whispered, and there was so much genuine joy in her voice that Hunter felt his chest tighten. "You did it," he corrected. Brenda looked at him, hair messy, face dirty, clothes stained with birth fluids. She should have looked like a disaster. Instead, she looked absolutely perfect. She insisted. You kept her calm. That mattered. For a moment, they just looked at each other. There was no teasing now, no games. Just two human beings who had witnessed the miracle of life together. And it was exactly in that moment that Hunter had a dangerously reckless thought. What would she do if I finally cornered her and showed her what happens when you push a man who's been quiet too long? As if she could read his mind, Brenda bit her lower lip, that damned gesture she used whenever she was plotting something. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, and there was something in her voice that suggested she had a pretty good idea. "Things I shouldn't," Hunter admitted, his voice rougher than he intended. "Oh yeah?" Brenda leaned slightly closer, and Hunter realized they were dangerously near. "What kind of things?" Hunter opened his mouth to answer. For what, exactly, he didn't know when footsteps approached. "Got the kit." Joe appeared at the top of the hill, holding the veterinary bag like a trophy. "Well, I'll be." "The calf's already here." Brenda jumped to her feet, instantly sliding into that professional posture Hunter was learning. Was her default defense whenever there were witnesses. "Yes." Everything went great thanks to Hunter. Joe looked at Hunter, still shirtless, sweaty, kneeling in the grass beside Brenda, and a slow, knowing smile spread across the old cowboy's face. "Did it now? Well, that's interesting." Hunter grabbed his shirt and pulled it on quickly, feeling his ears burn. "I'll go tell Mr. Whitaker the calf was born healthy," Joe said, that irritating grin still plastered on his face. "He'll want to know Miss Brenda was so helpful." When Joe walked off, Brenda let out a little giggle. "Guess we just became cowboy gossip." "Great," Hunter muttered. "Exactly what I needed." Brenda stepped closer, and this time there were no witnesses to interrupt. She laid her hand on his arm, that touch that seemed to burn straight through the fabric of his shirt. "Hunter? Thank you for trusting me, for letting me do this." There was something so sincere in her voice that Hunter momentarily forgot all his defenses. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Brenda." "Yes, I do." She gave his arm a light squeeze. "Especially to you." "Why?" Brenda rose on her tiptoes, a small move that brought her dangerously close to his face, and whispered, "Because your opinion is the only one that really matters to me." Before Hunter could fully process those words, before he could do the stupid, wonderful thing his body was begging him to do, Brenda was already pulling away. "Better go get cleaned up before someone sees us like this," she said, slipping back into that teasing tone. "Though you shirtless is a sight any woman would appreciate. Cowboy." And with a wink, she started walking back toward the house, leaving Hunter standing there, dirty, confused, and completely undone. As he watched her go, the sway of her hips that should have been illegal, her messy blonde hair catching the morning sun, Hunter realized something fundamental had changed. He wasn't just attracted to Brenda Whitaker anymore. It wasn't just the game of teasing that fascinated him. He was starting to respect her, to admire her, to see beyond the boss's daughter, beyond the incorrigible tease, beyond the angelic face hiding a sharp mind. He was beginning to see the real woman. The woman who saved calves with steady hands and gentle words. The woman who worked hard to prove her worth. The woman who loved that land as much as he did. And that, Hunter knew with absolute certainty, was infinitely more dangerous than any provocation, because you can resist temptation. You can fight attraction. You can ignore games. But when you start respecting someone, when you start admiring them, when you start seeing the soul behind the smile, that's when you're truly lost. "Damn," Hunter muttered to himself, running a hand through his hair in frustration. What a ridiculous mess. But even as he cursed, a stubborn smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. The kind of smile a man gives when he knows he's losing a battle but secretly doesn't mind the defeat. He shook his head, half laughing at himself, half cursing the fate that had put that impossible woman in his path. "Hunter Callahan," he said out loud as if speaking to a particularly foolish friend. "You're dancing, man. And the worst part is, you're enjoying it." And it was true. For the first time in 5 years of iron discipline and impeccable self-control, he was enjoying losing control. Some nights in Montana are so beautiful they almost hurt. The full moon turned the entire ranch into something nearly magical. Every fence, every tree, every blade of grass bathed in liquid silver. Hunter couldn't sleep. Again. It was the third night in a row that his brain refused to shut off, replaying on endless loop Brenda's smile, her voice, the way she bit her lip when she was focused. "Pathetic," he muttered to himself, pulling on jeans and an old shirt. Checking the fences in the north pasture seemed a better excuse than admitting he was mentally wrecked by a woman he technically wasn't even supposed to look at. It was close to midnight when he reached the north pasture. And then he saw her. Brenda was sitting on the fence, legs swinging in the air, face turned toward the moon, as if holding a private conversation with the stars. She wore an oversized sweatshirt, and her hair fell loose in waves over her shoulders. For a moment, Hunter considered backing away quietly. But as if she could sense his presence, she turned her head. "Can't sleep either?" she asked without surprise in her voice. Hunter hesitated only a second before walking toward her. "Either?" "Third night in a row." Brenda patted the wood beside her in silent invitation. "Sit. The moon's generous tonight." Hunter climbed onto the fence, carefully keeping a safe distance between them. Brenda noticed and smiled. Small, but he caught it. "Afraid I'll bite?" she teased. "Afraid of what might happen if you do," he replied before thinking better of it. Brenda laughed, that low, genuine laugh that did strange things to his nervous system. "What are you doing out here?" Hunter asked, breaking the silence that was starting to feel dangerous. "Thinking." She looked toward the horizon, to the vast lands bathed in moonlight. "About how some things never change, you know. When I was a kid, I used to sit right here and imagine my future." "What kind of future?" Brenda turned to look at him, and there was something vulnerable in her eyes Hunter had never seen before. "When I was little," she said softly, "I imagined my Prince Charming. Do you know what I pictured?" Hunter swallowed hard, not trusting his voice to answer. "A man who loved this land as much as I do, who understood that waking before the sun isn't a sacrifice, it's a privilege, who knew that sometimes the most romantic thing in the world is working side by side, building something that lasts." Every word was a direct arrow to Hunter's chest. "Brenda, who knew," she continued, turning fully toward him now, "that calloused hands are more beautiful than painted nails, that a sunset in the pasture is worth more than any fancy dinner in the city?" "Stop," Hunter said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "Why?" "Because you're describing something that can't happen." Brenda tilted her head, studying his face in the silver light of the moon. "Why not?" Hunter got off the fence, needing distance, needing air, needing anything but being so close to her while she said those things. "You know why? Because I'm your boss's daughter." She climbed down from the fence too, approaching him with that determination he was learning was impossible to resist. "Among other things." "What other things?" Hunter turned toward her, the moonlight illuminating her face in a way that made his chest ache painfully. "Because you deserve someone from your own class. Someone who can give you the life you deserve." He raked a hand through his hair, frustration in every movement. "Because I'm 35, Brenda. 12 years older than you. And yes, because you're the boss's forbidden daughter. And you know that just as well as I do. Everyone on this ranch knows messing with you is begging to get fired. Or worse." Brenda stopped right in front of him, so close he could feel the heat radiating from her body in the cold night air. "What nonsense. This isn't about classes, cowboy," she said, and there was something fierce in her voice. "This is about dreams, about purpose, about truth. And I'm a grown woman. Brenda, do you really think," she took another step, eliminating the distance between them completely, "that I want some guy in a suit who can't tell hay from straw? That I want someone who sees this ranch as an investment instead of a home? You deserve better than what?" She placed her hand on his chest, and Hunter felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. "Better than a man who wakes at 4:30 because he loves what he does. Better than someone who treats every animal on this ranch like family. Better than you? I can't give you—" "You can give me honesty," Brenda interrupted, looking straight into his eyes. "You can give me partnership. You can give me someone who understands why I love waking up to the smell of wet earth and the sound of calves. Or am I wrong?" Hunter had no answer, not because he didn't know what to say, but because every defense he'd built was crumbling like sandcastles. "Am I wrong, Hunter?" Brenda pressed, her hand still warm against his chest. "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you don't feel this too." And then Brenda smiled. That damned smile, provocative, full of challenge. "Oh, I see. The great Hunter Callahan, the man who tames wild horses and runs 1,000 acres of land, is afraid of a 23-year-old girl." Something snapped inside Hunter. "Afraid?" His voice came out low, dangerous. "You think this is fear?" "I do," Brenda provoked, her eyes shining with triumph because she knew exactly what she was doing. "I think you're afraid of—" Hunter didn't let her finish the sentence. In one fluid motion, he pulled her by the waist, erased the inches between them, and captured that provocative mouth with his own. The kiss was anything but gentle. It was weeks of tension unraveling all at once. It was an answer to provocations, an end to resistance. Hunter finally giving in to the inevitable. Brenda froze for a second, clearly surprised, clearly not expecting him to have the courage. But it was only a second. Then she answered with the same intensity, her hands tangling in his hair, clinging to him as if he were an anchor in the middle of a storm. Every movement was an answer, every breath a confirmation of what they had both been denying for weeks. When they finally broke apart for air, Brenda's eyes were wide, her cheeks flushed, her lips slightly swollen. "Hunter!" He didn't let her finish. He couldn't. He pulled her back in, this time with more tenderness, savoring the moment. Memorizing every detail of that instant he knew would change everything. Brenda sighed, a low sound that reverberated straight through Hunter's chest. He pulled her closer, pressing her gently against the fence post, lost in the heat of the moment he had resisted for so long. She wrapped her arms around his neck, making it clear that the flame burned on both sides. That's when they heard the footsteps, heavy, unmistakable, coming their way. Hunter and Brenda jumped apart, eyes wide, hearts pounding like war drums. A lantern's light appeared on the hill. "Damn," Hunter whispered. "It's your father." "What?" Brenda panicked. "What's he doing awake?" "Doesn't matter." "You can't be here." Hunter looked around desperately, searching. "Anything." "There!" He practically pushed Brenda behind a small tool shed a few yards away, pressing her against the wooden wall. "Stay quiet," he whispered, their faces dangerously close again in the dark. "Don't make a sound. Hunter, Shh." The footsteps were closer now. The lantern's beam swept across the pasture. "Hunter, that you out there?" Hunter stepped away from Brenda, took a deep breath to compose himself, and stepped out from behind the shed with what he hoped was a casual expression. "Mr. Whitaker." "Good evening." The older man stopped, shining the lantern on Hunter. His face was a mask of suspicion. "What are you doing out here at this time of night?" Hunter's heart pounded so hard he was sure his boss could hear it. "Couldn't sleep," he said, forcing a casual tone. "Came to check the fences. With that wind yesterday, I thought something might have come loose." Mr. Whitaker looked around, the lantern sweeping the area. Hunter silently prayed Brenda stayed exactly where she was. "Alone?" "Yes, sir. Why?" "Thought I heard voices." "Must have been me," Hunter improvised quickly. "I've got the terrible habit of talking to myself when I work. My mom always said it was a sign of intelligence. But I think it's just plain weird." He laughed, a sound he hoped came off natural. Not like someone on the verge of a heart attack. Mr. Whitaker didn't look fully convinced. But the lantern finally stopped sweeping the area. "You seen Brenda around?" Hunter felt his stomach drop. "Brenda?" "Dunno, sir. Why? Did she go out?" "When I went to get water in the kitchen, I noticed the back door unlocked. Thought it was strange." The older man frowned. "That girl has a habit of wandering off when she can't sleep." "Worries me. Want me to help look?" Hunter offered, hating every word but knowing refusing would look suspicious. No need. Mr. Whitaker started to turn away. "She's probably in her studio drawing. Or sneaking ice cream thinking I don't know." He took a few steps, then turned back again. "Hunter?" "Yes, sir?" "You're a good man. I trust you completely." Guilt hit Hunter like a punch in the stomach. "Thank you, sir. That's why I know if something inappropriate were going on out here, you'd tell me, right?" Mr. Whitaker's eyes pierced Hunter in the dark, and for a terrible moment, he was sure the man knew exactly what had just happened. "Of course, sir," he managed, his voice sounding strange even to his own ears. "Good," Mr. Whitaker finally smiled. "Good night, then. And Hunter, get some sleep. You look tired." "Good night, sir." Hunter stood there completely still, listening to the footsteps fade, watching the lantern's glow disappear toward the house. He waited a full 5 minutes before finally allowing himself to breathe. "Is he gone?" Brenda's whispered voice came from behind the shed. "I think so." Brenda emerged from the darkness, and even in the panic of the situation, Hunter noticed her lips were still rosy, her hair still tousled where his hands had been. "My God," she whispered, pressing a hand to her chest. "My heart almost leapt out of my mouth." "Mine too." Hunter ran a hand over his face. "Brenda, that was insane." "It was," she agreed, but there was a small smile on her lips. "But worth it. We almost got caught." "Almost." She stepped closer, resting her hand on his arm. "But we didn't. And Hunter? What?" "You kissed me, as if he could forget. You were provoking me, and you shut me up." Her smile grew. In the best way possible. Hunter knew he should back away. He should say it was a mistake, that it couldn't happen again, that they needed to forget it. But when he looked at her, hair messy, eyes shining, all he could do was chuckle softly. "You're impossible." "And you," Brenda rose on tiptoe, brushing a quick kiss against the corner of his mouth, "just proved you're not as straight-laced as you want everyone to think." Before he could answer, or do something even more foolish like kiss her again, she was already stepping back. "I better get back before Dad realizes I'm not in the studio eating ice cream." "Brenda." "Good night, Hunter." She winked, that damn wink. "Sleep well, if you can, and then she disappeared into the night, leaving Hunter alone with the sound of his own uneven breathing, and the absolute certainty that his life had just gotten complicated in a way there was no coming back from. He touched his lips, still tasting her, and shook his head. "Hunter Callahan," he said to the stars, "you just kissed the boss's daughter. You are officially the dumbest man in Montana." But even as he said it, even knowing all the trouble that kiss meant, he couldn't regret it. Because for 30 perfect seconds, Brenda Whitaker had been completely his. And now that he knew what that felt like, how the hell was he supposed to go back to pretending he didn't want more? 5 days. 5 days since that kiss under the full moon that had turned Hunter's world upside down. 5 days of hard work during the day, and stolen moments when no one was looking. A quick kiss behind the barn when she brought him water. Another in the feed shed, interrupted by the barking of a dog. Fingers entwined for 2 precious seconds, while walking side by side inspecting the cattle, always with one eye alert for witnesses. It was dangerous. It was insane, and Hunter couldn't stop. On Thursday morning, he was fixing the water pump when he heard the rumble of an engine. Not just any engine, a black BMW convertible that screamed money and privilege. Hunter straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans, watching the car stop in front of the main house. Out stepped a man who looked like he'd walked straight out of a business magazine. Perfectly styled hair, a dress shirt under an expensive casual sweater, a watch that probably cost more than Hunter's yearly salary. "Derek," Mr. Whitaker's voice echoed across the ranch, full of genuine warmth. "My boy." The man, Derek apparently, flashed a toothpaste commercial smile and hugged the boss like they were old friends. "Mr. Whitaker, how have you been?" Hunter felt something uncomfortable shift in his stomach. He didn't like the intimacy, didn't like the familiarity, and definitely didn't like it when he saw Brenda walk out of the house. She wore a light dress, rare, since he usually saw her in jeans and boots, and her hair was loose. Cascading in waves, the morning sun turned into melted honey. She was stunning, and Derek clearly noticed. "Brenda." The man opened his arms. "You are, wow, even more beautiful than the last time I saw you." Brenda smiled, polite, cordial, and accepted a quick hug. "Derek, what a surprise. Your father invited me to spend the weekend. I couldn't refuse the chance to see how the ranch is doing." His eyes didn't leave her face. "And to see you, of course." Hunter gripped the wrench hard enough to hurt his hand. "Hunter." Mr. Whitaker finally noticed him. "Come here, I want to introduce you to someone." Reluctantly, Hunter walked toward the group. Painfully aware he was covered in grease and sweat while Derek looked fresh out of a catalog. "Hunter Callahan, this is Derek Morrison. Derek, this is my general manager, the man who keeps this ranch running." Derek extended his hand with a smile that was cordial but didn't quite reach his eyes. "Pleasure. I've heard a lot about you." "Likewise," Hunter lied, squeezing the man's hand harder than necessary. For a second, something flickered in Derek's eyes. Recognition, maybe. That there was more to the situation than met the eye. But it passed quickly. "Derek is James Morrison's son," Mr. Whitaker explained. "We were partners in our youth. Brenda and he practically grew up together, didn't you, Derek?" "Yes, sir. Brenda and I played together as kids." Derek smiled at her. "Though you were more interested in horses than in me, if I remember correctly." Brenda laughed. That polite laugh Hunter had learned meant she was being courteous, not genuine. "I still prefer horses," she said, and Hunter had to hide a grin. But Derek either didn't catch the hint or chose to ignore it. "Well, I hope to change that over the weekend." He turned to Mr. Whitaker. "If I may, I'd like to show you some of the sustainable technology projects we've implemented on our property. I thought Brenda might be interested." "Great idea." Mr. Whitaker clapped Derek on the shoulder with paternal approval. "Brenda's developing some projects of her own here. You two have a lot in common." Hunter felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "Actually," Derek continued, "I was thinking of inviting Brenda to dinner tonight. There's a new restaurant in town I've heard wonderful things about." "Oh, Derek, I don't know if—" Brenda began, but her father cut her off. "That's great. You need to go out more, princess. You only work on this ranch." Brenda's eyes met Hunter's for a second, an unspoken apology, before she smiled at Derek. "Sure, that would be nice." "That would be nice?" Hunter had to stop himself from clenching his fists. Excellent. Derek beamed. Shall I pick you up at 7? As the three of them walked toward the house, Mr. Whitaker talking excitedly about ranch improvements, Derek asking all the right questions, Brenda walking between them. Hunter stood there like an idiot watching and hating every second. The rest of the day was pure torture. Hunter tried to focus on his work, but his eyes kept drifting to wherever Derek and Brenda were. And they were together, constantly. Derek asked for a tour of the ranch. Brenda politely showed him everything. Hunter watched from a distance, seeing Derek laugh at her jokes, casually touch her arm, lean too close when she pointed something out. Good-looking couple, don't you think? Hunter turned to find Joe beside him, a knowing smile on his wrinkled face. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Joe spat on the ground. Mr. Whitaker certainly thinks so. Heard him talking to Mrs. Maria earlier. Said Derek would make a perfect son-in-law. Hunter's jaw locked. Is that so? Oh yes. Same social class, same education, same lifestyle. Joe patted Hunter's shoulder. Perfect on paper. There was something in Joe's tone, almost like he was testing Hunter's reaction. Good for her then, Hunter said, forcing a neutral tone. Yeah. Joe started walking away, then paused. Though paper isn't everything, is it? Sometimes the heart wants what it wants, no matter what makes sense on paper. Hunter didn't answer, but his hands curled into fists. At 3 in the afternoon, Hunter was in the stable when he heard voices approaching. Instinctively, he hid behind one of the stalls. Not proud of it, but not apologizing either. So, this is where the magic happens? Derek's voice echoed in the stable. This is Thunder, Brenda replied. And Hunter could hear the genuine affection in her voice when she spoke of the horse. He's temperamental, but amazing. Like his owner, Derek joked, and Hunter ground his teeth. Derek. Sorry, couldn't resist. A pause. Brenda, I know it's been a while since we've seen each other, but... Well, you've grown into an impressive woman. Smart, beautiful, passionate about what you do. Hunter braced himself to step out and do something. Anything to stop it. Thank you, Derek, that's very kind. It's not kindness. It's the truth, and Well, I'd like the chance to get to know you better. Truly. Silence. Hunter counted to 10, then 20, hating every second. Derek, you're a nice guy. But no need to answer now. Derek interrupted quickly. It's just dinner. No pressure, just give me a chance. Another endless silence. All right, just dinner. Hunter waited until they left before emerging from his hiding place, feeling like a pathetic teenager. He ran a hand over his face, trying to control the fury burning in his chest. She had said yes. To dinner, to getting to know him better, to giving him a chance. Idiot, he muttered to himself. What did you expect? That she'd keep waiting for you in the shadows forever? But knowing that logically didn't make it hurt any less. That evening, Hunter was finishing the last check of the day when he saw Derek coming down the stairs of the main house, immaculate in dress pants and a shirt. Minutes later, Brenda appeared, and Hunter forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple yet elegant dress that highlighted every curve, her hair pinned in a loose bun with perfect strands falling, and light makeup that made her eyes look even bluer. She was absolutely stunning, and she was going to dinner with another man. Derek offered his arm, Brenda took it, and the two of them walked to the BMW while Mr. Whitaker watched from the porch with an approving smile. That's when Brenda looked back. Her eyes found Hunter's across the distance, and there was something there. A question, a challenge, maybe even a tease. Then she got into the car and they drove off, leaving Hunter alone with his toxic thoughts and irrational jealousy. She wants to drive me crazy, he said to the empty air. That has to be it. Some kind of sadistic test. He spent the next 3 hours doing jobs that didn't need to be done. Anything to keep his mind occupied. When he finally gave up and went home, it was close to 11 at night, and the BMW still hadn't returned. Hunter lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, imagining where they were. What they were doing, whether Derek was making her laugh, whether he was touching her arm in that casual way, whether he was trying to kiss her. That last thought almost made Hunter get up and go out to do something stupid. That's when he heard the familiar squeak of his bedroom window. Hunter jumped out of bed so fast he almost fell, whirling to find Brenda, still in her elegant dinner dress but barefoot, hair tousled, slipping through his window. "What on earth are you doing?" he whispered, rushing to help her in. "Coming to see you, obviously," she answered, as if climbing into someone's room at midnight were the most natural thing in the world. "Brenda, if someone sees you, no one will. Everyone's asleep." She stood in the middle of his room now, and in the faint moonlight she looked almost unreal, including Derek, who's staying in the guest room. Hunter crossed his arms, forcing himself to keep his distance, because if he touched her now, he wouldn't stop. "How was dinner?" "Pleasant. Pleasant. Yes, good food, pretty restaurant." Derek was the perfect gentleman. Every word was a knife in Hunter's chest. "Great." Brenda tilted her head, studying his face with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You're jealous." "I'm not." "You are." She took a step toward him. "Your eyes get darker when you're mad, and they're practically black right now." "I'm not jealous," Hunter repeated, knowing it was a pathetic lie. "You can go out with whoever you want." "Can I really?" Another step. She was dangerously close now. "Then it shouldn't bother you to know Derek tried to kiss me." Hunter felt like he'd been punched. And I turned away. I said it was too soon, that I needed to take it slow. She was right in front of him now, looking straight into his eyes. "Want to know why?" Hunter couldn't speak. He could barely breathe. "Because," Brenda placed her hand on his chest right over his racing heart, "there's already a stubborn idiot occupying that spot. An idiot who watches me from afar with murder in his eyes instead of just admitting what he feels." "Brenda, are you going to stand there staring at me?" she teased, using the same words from that night under the stars. "Or are you going to fight for me?" Something snapped inside Hunter. He pulled her against him, erasing every inch of distance, and kissed her with all the frustration, jealousy, and desire he'd been swallowing all day. It was different from the stolen kisses of the last few days. It was a claim, a promise. It was Hunter saying without words that she was his, and Derek Morrison could go jump in a lake. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Brenda smiled. That satisfied smile that said she knew exactly the effect she had on him. "That's all I wanted to hear," she whispered. "You're impossible," Hunter said, but there was no anger in his voice, only reluctant admiration. "And you're mine." She stole another quick kiss before backing toward the window. "I'd better go before someone notices I'm gone." "Brenda, wait." But she was already at the window, turning back with a wink. "More tomorrow, cowboy. Derek's here all weekend." And then she vanished into the night, leaving Hunter standing there, half frustrated, half relieved, completely crazy about a woman who clearly enjoyed making him suffer. But at least now he knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was his, and he was hers. Derek Morrison might have the money, the education, the father's approval, but Hunter had her heart, and in the end, that's what mattered. The weekend dragged like molasses. Derek was everywhere, always with a charming smile, always with a compliment ready, always finding excuses to be near Brenda. And she, to her credit, dodged him with the grace of a ballerina. When he suggested a romantic outing, she mentioned pending work. When he praised her dress, she steered the conversation back to ranch projects. It was a delicate dance, and Hunter hated every second of it. Saturday afternoon. Hunter was hauling feed bags when he felt a small hand tug him behind the tool shed. "Brenda, what?" She shut him up with a quick kiss, then pulled back with that mischievous smile he was learning meant danger. "Hello to you too, cowboy." Hunter glanced around, checking for witnesses. "Are you out of your mind?" Derek could show up any minute. Derek's helping Dad with who knows what in the office. She toyed with his shirt collar. "I finally got 5 minutes apiece. How are you putting up with that stuffed shirt trailing you everywhere?" The words came out harsher than Hunter intended. Brenda arched a brow, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Jealous, Hunter?" Answering the question. "Oh, it's tough." She sighed dramatically. "I wish it were my alpha cowboy chasing me, but he's leaving me very unprotected." Something primal roared in Hunter's chest. He pressed her against the shed wall, gentle but firm, erasing any space between them. "Unprotected?" His voice came out low, rough, dangerous. "I've got my eye on what's mine." "And you're mine, Brenda Whitaker. Only mine, got it? And I will honor you." And he kissed her like he wanted to etch that truth into her soul. When they parted, Brenda's eyes were shining with satisfaction. "That's all I wanted to hear." but the moment was far too brief. The weekend kept marching on cruelly, and Hunter went back to watching from afar, while Derek orbited Brenda like the moon around the earth, until Sunday afternoon, when everything fell apart. Hunter had just reached the stable to check on the horses when he heard voices. Tense voices. "Derek, I already said, just one kiss, Brenda. That's all I'm asking?" Hunter froze, every muscle in his body primed for action. "And I already said no." Brenda's voice had that sharp edge he knew well. She was losing patience. "Why not? We had a great weekend together. As friends. Come on, Brenda. You must know how I feel, and what you do to me, princess. Your dad approves." "To make sense. Derek, stop." Hunter moved silently to the stable entrance. He could see them now. Derek lightly holding her arm, Brenda trying to pull away. Her face a mask of polite discomfort. "Just give me a chance," Derek insisted, tugging her a little closer. "One kiss. If you don't feel anything, I'll stop." "Derek, let me go." She said, "Let go." Hunter's voice cracked through the air like a whip. They both turned, but Hunter only had eyes for Derek's hand on Brenda's arm. "Let her go, now." Derek released Brenda immediately, but irritation flickered across his face. "This is none of your business, cowboy. It is when the lady is clearly not interested." Hunter stepped forward until he stood between them, a physical barrier. She said no twice. "I was just harassing her." "That's what you were doing." Derek's jaw tightened. He looked from Hunter to Brenda, then back again, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, understanding. "Interesting," he said slowly, a dangerous note in his voice. "Very interesting, this concern you have for Brenda. What's that supposed to mean?" Hunter took a step forward, but Brenda placed a hand on his arm, trying to calm him. "It means," Derek smiled, though there was no humor in it, "that I'm beginning to wonder if there's something more going on here. Something Mr. Whitaker ought to know." The air thickened. Hunter felt every cell in his body brace for a fight. "Watch what you're about to say." "Or what?" Derek folded his arms. "I'm not inventing anything. I'm merely observing that the hired hand seems very invested in the boss's daughter, Derek." "Enough." Brenda's voice carried a sharp warning, but Derek was on a mission now, his pride wounded and aiming to wound back. "I'm curious what Mr. Whitaker would think if he knew you were getting cozy with his daughter. I bet he wouldn't be too happy to discover that." "Shut up." Hunter lunged forward, stopping inches from Derek's face. "Shut your mouth before you say things you can't back up. I'm protecting her from being bothered against her will." Nothing more, their eyes locked in a silent duel. Derek was smaller, leaner, but there was venom in his stare. "I still find it interesting," he said softly, "that you appeared so conveniently, Derek Morrison." All three turned. Mr. Whitaker was standing a few yards away, his expression confused and suspicious. "Dad!" Brenda instantly took control, striding to him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good thing you came. Derek was showing me a handling technique they use on his ranch, and Hunter stepped in to give his professional opinion. We were having a spirited debate about methods. It was such a smooth, natural lie that Hunter almost believed it himself." Mr. Whitaker looked between the three of them, focusing especially on Hunter and Derek, who still stood dangerously close. "A debate, huh?" Skepticism laced his voice. "On pasture rotation," Brenda continued, looping her arm through her father's and gently steering him away. "You know how these experts love to disagree. Come on, I want to show you the numbers from the project." She shot Hunter a quick glance, half warning, half promise, before disappearing with her father. Derek and Hunter remained, tension crackling in the air. "You're a fool if you think you stand a chance with her," Derek finally said, his voice low and poisonous. "And you're a fool if you think force and persistence will ever make her like you." Derek smiled, a cold smile that held no warmth. "We'll see who Mr. Whitaker prefers once he learns the truth. His old partner's son, or the hired hand?" He walked away, leaving Hunter with fury, fear, and the absolute certainty that things were about to explode. Hours later, night had fallen. Hunter sat in his cabin, trying to process the disaster of the day. When he heard knocking at the door, he opened it to find Brenda, her hair tousled, eyes shining, breath quick as though she had run. "Brenda." "What? I had to see you." Hunter glanced over her shoulder, checking if anyone had followed, before pulling her inside and closing the door. You shouldn't be here. I know. Your father could find out. Derek is probably already spreading poison. I know. Then why? Because I needed to see you. Her voice cracked slightly. Because after that whole circus, I needed to know that we... Hunter shut his eyes, fighting the urge to pull her into his arms against the good sense, screaming this was madness. Brenda, we have to stop this. Silence. When he opened his eyes, she was looking at him as though he'd slapped her. What? This, he gestured between them. Us, it's wrong. It's dangerous. It's what, Hunter? Fire blazed in her eyes now. What? Forbidden? Improper? Yes, all of it. He dragged his hands through his hair, frustration boiling over. Your father will never allow it. Derek's right, I'm just a ranch hand. I'm not enough for you. Not enough? Brenda practically shouted. Who decided that, you? Because I sure as hell didn't. Your father. My father what? He's never said a word. You're building walls all by yourself. Oh, he made it pretty clear that day by the fence. I think he's already suspicious. Brenda, be realistic. I am being realistic. Tears glimmered in her eyes now, though she refused to let them fall. You're the one making excuses. Hunter felt as though he'd been punched. They're not excuses, they are. She stepped closer, jabbing a finger into his chest. You're afraid. Afraid to fight for what you want. Afraid to admit that this, she gestured furiously between them, is real. Of course it's real. But that doesn't change. Answer me one thing. Her voice dropped lower, fiercer. Do you want me? Brenda, answer. Do you want me as much as I want you? Because I want you, Hunter Callahan. I want you so much it hurts. I want you despite all your excuses and fears and self-made barriers. So answer me, do you want me? The world stopped. Hunter looked at her, hair messy, eyes shining with unshed tears, lips trembling slightly, but her jaw set in determination, and all his resistance crumbled. More than my next breath, he yanked her against him, crushing his mouth to hers in a kiss that was hunger, desperation, and promise. It wasn't gentle. It was raw need, every emotion of the day exploding at once. Brenda sighed into his mouth, her hands flying into his hair, dragging him closer, deeper, as if she could fuse them together. When they finally tore apart for air, Hunter pressed his forehead to hers. Their breaths tangled. I love you. The words came out rough, true, inevitable. I love you, you fascinating, provoking, utterly untamable blonde who turned my life upside down. A tear slipped down her cheek. Relief, joy. Couldn't tell. Took you long enough, she whispered. I've been a fool, you have. She smiled through the tears. But you're my fool. Hunter cupped her face in his hands, memorizing every detail. If this is what you want, me, us, all the mess that comes with it, then that's what you'll have. I'll fight your father. I'll face Derek. I'll do whatever it takes. All I need is for you to choose me, Brenda said softly. That's all. I choose you. He kissed her forehead, then each cheek, then her lips again. I'll always choose you. And for the first time since Brenda Whitaker had walked onto the ranch weeks ago, Hunter felt peace. It didn't matter what came next. Her father's disapproval, the gossip of the ranch hands, the judgmental stares of men like Derek, because he had something no one could take, her heart, and she had his, completely, irrevocably, forever. Hunter Callahan wasn't afraid of much. He'd broken wild horses, stared down temperamental bulls, and ridden out storms that made grown men pray. But walking to Mr. Whitaker's office on Monday morning, that was terrifying. He knocked 3 times before hearing the raspy come in. The boss sat behind his desk, reading glasses at the tip of his nose, papers spread out before him. Hunter, what can I do for you? Hunter closed the door behind him, a detail not lost on the older man's sharp eyes. Sir, I need to speak with you. About Brenda. Mr. Whitaker slowly removed his glasses and set them on the desk with deliberate care. His face gave nothing away. About my daughter, not a question. Hunter swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Sit, not an invitation. Hunter sat in the chair across from the desk, feeling like a schoolboy sent to the principal. Silence stretched. Mr. Whitaker simply studied him, those penetrating eyes missing nothing, the sweat at Hunter's temple, the hands clenched on his knees, the tight jaw. "I'll be direct with you. Hunter," he said at last, leaning back and lacing his fingers. "I'm not blind. I've noticed certain things. The way you look at my daughter, the way she smiles when you're around, the looks you two exchange when you think no one's watching." Hunter's stomach dropped. "Sir, I can explain." "Can you?" Mr. Whitaker leaned forward. "Then explain why my ranch manager, a 35-year-old man I trust completely, is getting involved with my 23-year-old daughter." The way he said "involved" made it clear he imagined the worst. Hunter drew a steadying breath and met his boss's eyes with everything honest in him. "Because I fell in love with her, sir." Silence. "Then go on." "I know I'm just an employee. I know she deserves someone better, someone who has more to offer. I know I'm 12 years older." Hunter held the man's gaze. "But I love your daughter, and my intentions are completely serious." "Serious?" Mr. Whitaker rolled the word, testing its weight. "What kind of serious?" "The kind that means marriage, sir. Eventually, if she'll have me. If she'll have you." There was something in his voice, not anger exactly, but definitely not approval. "You are aware my daughter is young, impressionable." Hunter had to bite back a laugh. Impressionable? Brenda Whitaker was about as impressionable as a hailstorm. Probably not the moment to mention that. "I'm aware she's smart, determined, and knows exactly what she wants, sir." "And she wants you? She returns your feelings?" "Yes, sir." "Have you taken advantage of the situation?" The question carried weight. Hunter kept his eyes steady. "I would never do anything to dishonor her or disrespect you, sir. You have my word." Mr. Whitaker studied him for a long beat. Then, surprisingly, he leaned back. "You came to me like a man. That says something about your character." Hunter hadn't expected that. "Sir, you could have kept hiding, waited to be found out. But you came straight to me, honest and clear." The older man sighed. "You've worked with me 5 years, Hunter. I know your character. You're a good man, not given to foolishness. Dedicated to your work. Man of his word." "Yes, sir. And I also know my daughter's determination." A small smile tugged at his weathered face. "Brenda is as stubborn as her mother was. She's always dreamed of living on this ranch, doing what she loves. Beside someone who loves this life as much as she does." A spark of hope flared in Hunter's chest. "And apparently," Mr. Whitaker continued, "that someone is you. I have conditions." His voice firmed again. "You will treat her with respect, always. You will honor her in public and in private. If she sheds a tear because of you, you answer to me. Yes, sir. You'll keep working hard. I want no special treatment because you're courting my daughter. If anything, you work harder. Yes, sir. And when, not if, but when you decide to ask for her hand, you come to me first. Like a real man." It felt like a 1,000-pound weight lifted off Hunter's shoulders. "Of course, sir. Thank you. Don't thank me yet." Mr. Whitaker stood. "I still need to confirm with Brenda that this is truly what she wants. If my daughter says she's being pressured or that she's changed her mind, this conversation ends here. Understood?" "Perfectly, sir." A knock sounded. Without waiting for an answer, Derek walked in and stopped short at the sight of Hunter. "Mr. Whitaker, I need to, I didn't realize you were busy." "Actually, Derek, perfect timing." The boss crossed his arms. "Hunter and I were just discussing him and Brenda." Something like triumph lit Derek's eyes. "Ah, yes. That's exactly what I came to talk about. Sir, I think you should know that they're involved." Mr. Whitaker interrupted calmly. "Yes, I know. Hunter was man enough to tell me himself." Derek's face cycled through surprise, frustration, anger, and finally settled into something like embarrassed defeat. "I see? And after watching my daughter this morning," Mr. Whitaker added, looking deliberately at Hunter, "I can confirm the feeling is mutual. Apparently they love each other, Derek, and there's nothing I or you can do about that." Derek stood a moment processing, then squared his shoulders with what dignity he had left. "Understood. Well, in that case, I should get back to my own responsibilities." He extended a hand to Mr. Whitaker. "Thank you for the hospitality. It's been enlightening." When Derek left, Hunter let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Sir, go." Mr. Whitaker jerked his chin toward the door. "Go find my daughter and get her off the porch. She's been out there 20 minutes waiting on the outcome of this, probably chewing her nails. Hunter drew a deep breath as the weight finally slid off. He hadn't been fired, and he might have just won something far bigger than a job. He smiled, a real relieved smile, then practically jogged out the door. That night, the ranch felt like a celebration. Nothing fancy, just the crew gathered, cold beer, meat sizzling on the grill, and Donna Maria's incredible food spread across makeshift tables. But there was music, Joe and 2 other hands on guitar and harmonica, laughter and easy joy. And there, in the middle of the yard under the stars, Hunter and Brenda danced, not caring one bit about the elbow nudges and chuckles around them. "I can't believe my father approved," Brenda murmured against his chest as they swayed. "Me neither. Thought he'd fire me on the spot. You're lucky." She looked up at him with those mischievous eyes. "That I defended you bravely." "Oh yeah? What did you say?" "That if he didn't approve, I'd run away with you to Mexico." Hunter laughed, spun her, and pulled her back in. "You did not. I did." He was so horrified that agreeing with you seemed the safer option. "You little liar." She silenced him with a quick kiss, slipping back before it turned scandalous in front of everyone. "Want to sneak off for a bit?" she whispered, nibbling her lip in that way that set his blood on a boil. "Brenda." "Just 5 minutes. In the barn, to talk." The way she said talk made it perfectly clear that words were the last thing on her mind. "You're going to kill me," Hunter muttered, but he was already guiding her discreetly away from the party. In the barn, they barely had time to shut the door before silence wrapped around them. Her eyes found his, and in that instant there was nothing left to hide. Brenda's hands framed his face as if to claim it, and when her lips touched his, the whole world seemed to stop to allow that moment. Hunter gathered her against his chest, feeling her breath mingle with his, her light perfume imprinting itself on his memory. There was no haste, only the sweet urgency of finally belonging to each other. His touch enveloped her like a promise. His mouth sketched tenderness and fire, and she pulled him closer still, as if to say without words she didn't want distance. The instant was theirs, secret, overwhelming, until a familiar voice echoed in the air. "Hunter! You there?" They broke apart as if struck by lightning. It was Joe. Of course it was Joe. "Damn!" Hunter hissed, looking desperately around. Brenda, to her credit, was already smoothing her hair and straightening her blouse with the calm of someone who had not been devoured seconds before. "Hide behind the hay bales," she whispered urgently. "What? No!" "Hunter! Go!" Hunter ducked behind the hay just as Joe pushed the barn door open. The old cowboy stopped short at the sight of Brenda alone, his eyebrows arching in suspicion. "Miss Brenda? What are you doing here?" "Oh, hi, Joe." She smiled, all innocence and sweetness. "I came to get a rope." "A rope? Yes, to tie things, for God's sake," Hunter thought from his ridiculous hiding place. That was the best excuse she had? "Tie what things, miss?" "Things that need to be firmly secured." Brenda grabbed a random rope off the wall. "You know how it is. Sometimes you need a good knot to make sure. Nothing escapes." Hunter closed his eyes. She was doing this on purpose. She had to be. Joe looked from the rope to Brenda, then at the suspicious barn, clearly processing whether there was more going on. "And Hunter? Weren't you looking for him?" "Oh, Hunter. He must be around. Busy man, always working hard on something." She gave a cheeky smile. "But if you find him, tell him I've got this rope here, in case he needs help tying something at the gate." "Later." Joe's eyes widened slightly. He looked again at the barn, then at Brenda, and a slow grin spread across his wrinkled face. "Of course, miss, I'll leave you with your boo." "Thank you, Joe. You're a sweetheart." Brenda swept out of the barn with the dignity of a queen, leaving Joe standing there, then glancing at the hay bales where Hunter was hidden. Hunter emerged slowly, face red, trying to look casual. "Hi, Joe." Joe studied him for a long moment. Then he laughed, a deep, hearty laugh that shook his whole body. "Boy," he said finally, still chuckling. "She's a handful, isn't she?" Hunter couldn't help but smile. "You have no idea." "Oh, I think I do." Joe clapped him on the shoulder as he passed. Good luck with that one, son. You'll need it. When Joe left, still laughing, Hunter leaned back against the barn wall and started laughing too. Brenda Whitaker was going to drive him crazy. Of that there was no doubt, but it was going to be the best kind of madness of his life. He stepped out of the barn to find her waiting outside, holding that damn rope with an expression of mock innocence. "Need help tying some things?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with pure mischief. Hunter pulled her against him, not caring who might see. "You're impossible, and you love me anyway, especially for that," and he kissed her there, under the Montana stars, while music and laughter drifted from the party. And for the first time since that impossible blonde had walked into his life, Hunter Callahan was completely, perfectly happy. No secrets. No hiding, no fear. Just love, mischief, and the promise of a lifetime of moments like this. 3 years later, Hunter was fixing the water pump again, when he felt delicate hands cover his eyes from behind. Guess who? A woman who should be reviewing productivity reports instead of distracting me? Wrong. Brenda spun and perched on the edge of the pump, blocking his access to the tool he needed. "I'm the co-manager of this ranch, thank you very much. I can do whatever I want." Co-manager who's sitting exactly where I need to work. She smiled. That smile that, even after 3 years of marriage, still made his heart skip a beat. "Then move me." Hunter sighed, but couldn't hide his grin as he grabbed her by the waist and set her aside. "You're impossible, and you love me anyway." Unfortunately, Brenda laughed, stealing a quick kiss before finally letting him work. More or less. She stayed there, watching, tossing out helpful comments that were really just more teasing. "You know," she said after a moment, "I was thinking about the proposal." Hunter stopped, raising an eyebrow at her. "Still traumatized? Me? You're the one who nearly had a heart attack, and it had been true." Hunter had planned everything meticulously. A romantic dinner, the perfect sunset, a rehearsed speech. But when he finally knelt, hands trembling, and asked if she would marry him, Brenda had looked at him with those mischievous eyes and said, I need to think." Hunter had frozen completely. "What? It's a big decision, Hunter. Spending my whole life with you?" She had tilted her head, biting her lip in that way he knew too well. "Putting up with your habit of waking up at 4 in the morning? Your obsession with irrigation? Your stubborn, methodical cowboy ways? Brenda! And the most important question." She had leaned in, whispering as if it were a secret. "Can you even handle me?" The air had shifted completely. Hunter had blinked, processing, and then something had lit in his eyes. Something dangerous and promising. He had stood slowly, pulling her by the waist, erasing any distance between them. "Handle you?" His voice had come out low, rough, charged. "My teasing blonde, do you really want to find out the answer right now?" And he had kissed her. A kiss that was anything but gentle, anything but polite. A kiss that answered her provocation with promises that made her knees go weak. When they finally parted, Brenda was breathless, cheeks flushed, eyes wide. "Hunter Callahan," she had whispered, "what was that? If you're going to keep kissing me like that, I'll accept your proposal." He had smiled, that rare smile that completely transformed his face. "Say it again." "I want to be sure I heard right. I'll marry you!" She had practically shouted, laughing and crying at the same time. "I accept, yes. 1,000 times yes. Now kiss me again before I lose my mind. You nearly killed me when you hesitated, you stubborn tease." Hunter grumbled now, returning to work on the pump, though a smile lingered on his lips. "I nearly died too," Brenda shot back. "That kiss was unfair." "Unfair?" "You deserved it. Completely. I still remember it and lose my breath. Good to know I still have that effect on you. Unfortunately." She sighed dramatically. 3 years married and you still sweep me off my feet with that alpha cowboy act when you want to. Only when you provoke first. So, always." Hunter laughed, pulling her into a quick kiss. "Admit it was a little funny. The whole situation. It was traumatizing. For both of us. But memorable. Definitely memorable." Brenda smiled. "And look, 3 years later, here we are. Ranch more profitable than ever. Sustainability projects running perfectly. You still making me breathless, and me still driving you crazy." It was true. The combination of Hunter's experience with Brenda's innovation, had turned Whitaker Ranch into a model of efficiency and sustainability. They had even received awards. And then there's Thomas, Brenda added, her voice softening. As if summoned by name, they heard the high-pitched laughter of a child coming from the porch of the main house. Hunter straightened, watching their 2-year-old son run after one of the dogs while Mr. Whitaker sat on the swing, a silly grin on his face. "Your father is spoiling our son," Hunter observed. "Our son is spoiling my father," Brenda corrected. "Yesterday he let Thomas have dessert before dinner. 3 times. 3. Ice cream, cookies, and that cake Mrs. Maria baked. Dad can't say no to that boy." Hunter laughed, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at the scene. The grandfather with his grandson. The ranch thriving all around, the woman at his side who still drove him crazy in all the best ways. "Do you regret it?" Brenda asked suddenly, her voice more serious. Hunter turned to her, confused. "Regret what?" "All this, me. The crazy life I dragged you into." He pulled her closer, wrapping her in his arms even with his hands still greasy. "It was the best decision I ever made. Even when I distract you at work, especially when you distract me at work. Even when I provoke you in front of the hands, even then. Even when," Hunter silenced her with a kiss, long and sweet and full of promises of years yet to come. When they parted, Brenda was smiling that satisfied smile that told him she knew exactly the effect she had on him. "You know," Hunter said, pulling her closer, "I still remember the first time I saw you. Arriving before dawn, tripping over your own luggage, talking to yourself. I didn't trip. Yes, you did. Almost fell face first into the gravel. Liar. You looked like an angel," Hunter continued, ignoring her protest, "but you came in like a storm. Charming, forbidden, irritating storm. Completely impossible to ignore. And I knew right then I was completely lost. Lost? Screwed. Ruined. Condemned to spend the rest of my life loving a woman who enjoys driving me insane." Brenda rose on tiptoe, kissing the corner of his mouth. "And you wouldn't change a thing? Not a second. Mommy!" "Daddy!" Thomas's little voice cut the moment. The boy came running toward them, arms outstretched, with his grandfather trailing behind, looking betrayed. "Grandpa said I can ride thunder." Hunter and Brenda exchanged a look. "Your father is definitely spoiling our son," Hunter repeated. "And you're going to let him ride thunder, aren't you?" "Of course I am. It's tradition." "You're soft. I learned from the best," Hunter replied, watching Mr. Whitaker scoop his grandson into his arms with a proud smile. Thomas wrapped his little arms around his grandfather's neck, laughing with the exact same laugh as Brenda. Pure joy and mischief combined. "He has your smile," Hunter observed, "and your stubbornness. God help us," Brenda laughed, lacing her fingers with his as they watched father and son. 3 generations of Whitakers. Plus Hunter, who had become part of the family in a way he had never thought possible. "Happy?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Hunter looked around, at the ranch they had built together, at the son who made them laugh every day, at the woman by his side who still managed to surprise him at every turn. "More than happy," he said. "I'm blessed." "Sappy. You made me that way, and I don't regret it one bit. Neither do I, my fascinating, teasing, endlessly untamable blonde." Endlessly? Endlessly. And as the sun set over Montana, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Hunter Callahan kissed his wife once more, knowing he had everything he had ever wanted. A land to work, a family to love, and a woman who would never ever let his life be boring. "Mommy! Daddy, Grandpa said I can have more ice cream." Brenda sighed. "I'm going to have a serious talk with my father." "Good luck with that. Come with me. You're better at being convincing. Only because you distract me too much to say no to you." "Exactly." She winked. That damned wink. "It's my superpower." And as they walked hand in hand back toward the house, Hunter knew one absolute truth. He had been doomed from the very first moment. And he wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And so ends the story of Hunter and Brenda, the stubborn cowboy who swore he'd never get involved with the boss's daughter, and the teasing blonde who turned never into forever. But before you leave still smiling at these 2 troublemakers, let me ask you something. Were you rooting for Hunter from that very first stolen kiss? Or were you on Brenda's side, cheering at every witty provocation that knocked him off balance? And since we're here, if you laughed, sighed, or held your breath at any point in this story, smash that like button. It's worth gold to this channel. You know why? Because every like tells me you want more stories like this, full of teasing, cowboys in love, and happily ever afters that make us believe in love all over again. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that red button now, because every week there's a brand new story here. And trust me, plenty more stubborn cowboys and fascinating ladies are waiting to steal your heart. Ring that bell too, because if you missed this story when it dropped, you'd never forgive yourself. And neither would I. Oh, and if you know someone who loves ranch romances, enjoys a sharp bit of teasing, or just needs a story to sigh over, share this video, because good stories are meant to be shared. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, take care of that heart of yours.